they
to
still
make horizontal
interrupted
photographs.
it here and there.
Sorry?
And they still interrupted it here and there with small little pictures.
Oh yes, well that they had to do, but I tried to oblige them to make which so one way was to put several girls on the photograph, which was always terrible because of course photographing three girls at the same time, there was always one which would make the wrong face, and so this went on forever. It was complicated. And the other one, which was more interesting, was to find ways in which the human body, which is vertical, could be somehow horizontal. Of course, there's one way in bed, but that was not for Harper's Bazaar. And so I was trying to find positions like this. And this particular girl, Natia Bascal, was extremely clever, actually. She was one of the great heiresses of Spanish aristocracy. Actually, they were twins, and one of them became a model. And she was one of the great models for Avedon.
Avedon. She did a great sequence with Avedon, with her sister.
She was really a great person, a great model.
So let's talk a little bit about models. Clearly you fell in love with one.
I fell in love with all the ones I photographed.
Were there difficulties or pleasures involved?
Well, say I wasn't a very successful Casanova. Actually, not at all.
But you had access in a certain way to. You had to choose the models you worked with.
I had a right, not a total right to choose them, but say I could suggest them, and there were good chances that the editor would accept them.
And clearly there were models that you enjoyed working with. There were people that you worked with again and again.
Yes, and when I said I didn't have personal, intimate relationship with them, I didn't even regret it, because in the good situations, what happened during a sitting was just as intense as what would have happened intimately after the sitting. So there was really no necessity for anything else. There were some sittings which were extremely intense and really very beautiful, because some of the girls were really remarkable persons. And I'm very happy to have that. They were not only very good looking, but they were really remarkable people, and something interesting could come out from a sitting.
Because one of the sequences in the show, I don't think we have slides of them here, but the woman that you photographed in Yorkshire, in England.
Yes.
There's something really very sweet about that series.
Judy Dent was an extraordinary woman, because she was the opposite of pretty, and at certain moments she could become very beautiful.
Well, because I just had a really nice. There was a sense of a really nice connection there, and I wondered whether.
But anyhow, whatever happened between me and those women has no importance at all. Okay. What matters is that something can be seen in the photograph.
Exactly. That's really all I was concerned of too. That there are moments where there's a real warmth and an affection that comes across. That's very sweet.
But about that, I have a story to tell which is amusing. So I was considered quite well known at the time, and when Antonioni did his film Blow Up, I was living in London then. He came to see me, and in order to find out about the relationship between models and photographers and so on, because he wanted to make a film about it. So I tried for a whole afternoon to tell him, and to tell him a little of what I'm saying now. And then when I saw the film, I was terribly angry and terribly disappointed.
Why?
Because I thought he's got it all wrong. In his film, the photographer would photograph and fuck, and then fuck and photograph and so on, which wasn't at all what I was doing and what I was trying
to convey there.
Yes.
Well, clearly, the photographer in the movie probably had a little more. There's something a little more like Guy Bourdin style than your style.
Yes.
But the fiction, was effective as a film.
It probably worked. I hated it.
But I'm interested that he did come and consult with you.
Yeah.
And, I wonder who else. This is still part of that sequence. Again, this is sort of more focusing on a sense of graphic impact in
Yes,
these
yes.
two pictures. That it's more about the graphic.
Well, what I was trying in those pictures is, again, is to get a double page.
Yes.
I wanted to get rid of the layouts. And so I wanted to take photographs which obliged them to put it on a double page, which they had.
Well, and they have this real impact because of that.
Yes.
This is part of that sequence. This is again still.
This was trying to put her in a position where she had to fill horizontal space.
Right. And then this is a well-known sequence of yours. Back to this is a special issue of Harper's Bazaar, I believe.
About Paris collection.
Two.
These are not very good, actually.
Oh. This is the introductory series.
And these are not, actually the ones they published are not the best. Yeah, this is a good one.
The one on the right
Yes,
is
yeah. That's a good one.
Printed. Although your image is flopped from this.
Of course it is, because I never got back my negatives.
Oh.
All my negatives for Bazaar are lost.
Uh-huh.
Black and white and color.
Ah.
And so the best I could do is use the prints I had to have them copied.
Yeah. So I like this sequence a lot. It's one that you are working with models and celebrities or figures who are from France. Did you get to choose them? Did the editor suggest?
There was a little of both. Actually, the first of the issues was about Italian fashion.
We have that later.
Yes, but it came chronologically before.
Okay, sorry.
And in the Italian issue, my suggestion was, Italian men are known for being womanizers and attractive and so on. Why don't you photograph the girls with Italian men? So of course, the magazine had editors who were very good at telephoning to all those people, and those people were all too glad to be in Harper's Bazaar. So we got Fellini, Mastroianni, and.
So this starts with sort of ordinary men on the street.
These were not ordinary men. This was the famous Italian football team.
Oh, okay.
They were the greatest men of Italy.
Because this looks like a group of men on the street.
Well, no, these were spectators, football spectators. And this was the Italian football team.
Very handsome.
And this, I don't know who it was. This was a tennis champion, I think. And this was, I think, some Count of Florence. I don't remember the name. He was a famous painter. He was Marzini. He was the same famous writer. This was Moravia, and so on. And this was some Marchese, and he was a young writer. This was Mr. Mastroianni, this is Fellini. But my greatest, and the girl was really the most beautiful blonde around, Deborah Dixon, who was one of Evans' best models. Oh. And so I thought all those Italians would be very excited about this beauty. And in fact, they couldn't care less. They were totally blasé about her and totally bored, and only wanted the sitting to be finished as soon as possible. So it was pretty hard to get it.
Well, and I remember you saying something about there was some disagreement between you and the editor and getting this whole thing set up.
Well, yes, because elegance for the Harper's Bazaar editor was enormous hats and lots of lipstick and lots of makeup. And I wanted the woman to be real. And so I wanted her to take the false eyelashes off and to take some lipstick off. Lipstick became a big problem because Nancy White, the editor, said, well, if you take all this lipstick off, we lose all the ads from Mr. Revson of Revlon. So you can't take it off. And so there were that kind of conflict.
Is that, I mean, did you face those sorts of um, conflicts here and there with editors?
A lot of them with Bazaar, not many with Vogue, because with Vogue they could do anything if they wanted or the photographer wanted. They had no. The only problem with most magazines was that the fashion they had to present was the ugliest fashion around.
Oh.
Because, of course, that was where the ads came from. You would never get, one never got a dress by Gress or Balenciaga to photograph.
Oh.
They didn't pay for advertising.
I think this may be. I jumped ahead to this Italian series. This is again the man eating spaghetti is one of.
He was a writer. I forgot his name.
But the setup is kind of great. The whole ambiance, and this.
And this was China, who was at the same time, China Machado was the editor and was an ex-model, so she also modeled.
In any case, it's a really rich sequence. This is the last image I have here, but just wanted to show this is your one Harper's Bazaar cover.
It was one Harper's Bazaar cover, and it is not my photograph. In the sense that it was a mistake by my assistant, and one of the flashes didn't go off. And that made this light, which was totally accidental. And so I told my assistant, look, it's really your photograph, and he put it in his portfolio.
Well, but it's a great effective cover. In fact, it's a folded cover, so that opens up as a gatefold when you look at it. And it's a really strong image. I noticed the image in the show is slightly different.
Yes, yeah. But I lost them, they didn't return the negative.
Again, another case where you didn't get them. Well, I'm curious in general about your relationship to film and to cameras. I understand that you sort of see each camera as having its own language and its own way of working with you.
Yes, each camera and each magazine also.
Oh. Talk a little bit about that.
Yes. I mean, I realized that for the first time. I began to work for Jardin de Mode, which was a good magazine at the time in France.
But more of a middle class?
More middle class. And then I was called by Elle, and Elle was altogether a different language. Elle was well, Elle was a magazine that was really made by its founder, Hélène Lazareff, who was a tiny woman who really believed in what she was doing. And Hélène was such a great journalist that she would say, I don't care what you tell me about marketing and about the reaction of the public. What's good enough for me is good enough for the readers. And so
she wasn't looking to focus groups.
And of course, what was good for her turned out to be good for the readers.
But Elle, my sense of Elle was also that it was for a much younger woman.
It was for a younger woman. It was certainly for a but for a younger and more modern and more ambitious woman. It wasn't just a young. It wasn't like Glamour, American Glamour.
Right.
It was much more. At the same time, it was sort of intellectual in a popular way.
Oh.
I mean, for instance, at one point, Hélène called me and said, I want you to make illustrations sur l'amour.
Oh.
What amour? Well, there was someone who wrote a book about four kinds of amour. The physical amour between the man and the woman, and then the amour between parents and children, and the amour which is Christian amour, and the amour which is friendship. So it was all very symbolical and pretentious. And but then I got along very well with her. I said, okay, fine, allow me to illustrate your four kinds of amour by just showing people's hands. And so we found hands of famous people and just photographed their hands. So the amour between men and women was an actor, Yul Brynner, with his wife, and the Christian charity was l'Abbé Pierre, who was a great religious figure in France, and so on. So we got along quite well. And one day I said to her, look, I really would like to photograph fashion in a real French village far away, somewhere in the back country. And oh, she said, marvelous. And then I was sent on a trip to Auvergne, which is like the Midwest for the States. And we found a village, and then we came there with our models and photographed them with the mayor and the policeman and the postman, whatever. And, you know, it's something that everyone has done since a million times. But it was a great event, and it was such a great event that seeing it, Marvin Israel said, well, asked me to come and work for Bazaar.
Oh, Marvin Israel, and then at the time the art director at Harper's Bazaar,
yes.
who had taken over from, well, Henry Wolf, but then after Alexei Brodovich. Can you talk a little bit? I'm very curious about that period of Bazaar with Marvin Israel, and at a time that he brought in Diane Arbus to the magazine. We were working alongside an interesting range of people, Hero, Saul Leiter.
Well, you know, Harper's Bazaar had this fantastic team of Brodovich and what's her name?
Carmel Snow.
Carmen Snow.
As the editor.
And that made it the greatest fashion magazine ever, and they got the greatest fashion photographer ever have done. And it was really a fantastic magazine. And then both Carmen Snow and Brodovich disappeared, and the succession was difficult. They tried all sorts of things, and at one point they tried Marvin Israel. And Marvin Israel was the very opposite of the high fashion and chic business. Marvin Israel had a kind of a loft or squat in downtown New York and a Jeep, and he made a point of not owning any furniture except things he picked up in the street. And he was also a great painter, and his wife was a very great sculptor. And so he tried to change the thing, and of course had a lot of fights. It was pretty difficult.
It didn't last very long.
It didn't last very long. But anyhow, he brought me over, and he asked me to work for Bazaar. So for me, it was an immense event to photograph for Bazaar and to photograph for the same magazine as Evedon, who seemed to me the greatest to me at the time. And the thing to do was, you know, and this is a beautiful thing about America in general and about Bazaar in particular, that when they do something, they tend to do all the way. So he encouraged me to go all the way, and he was really great about that.
Oh.
And we couldn't go all the way, but we tried.
But did you, when we were talking earlier, you felt, got the sense that you felt that this was a kind of liberating and almost, you know, not quite revolutionary, but a very interesting period for fashion and for the magazine.
Yes, well, I'm glad you remind me of this. You know, this was the interesting and possibly a slightly ridiculous part of the story. That people like myself, but there were a few others, they thought it was a kind of mission to show women as they were, not as puppets of fashion, to show what we called real women. And so it was like a fight and a mission and a sense of we were changing the world, which of course did change, but not quite as we imagined. And actually the greatest moment of all this, to me at least, was a series of which I've lost, and they didn't give me back the negatives, and I never got the issue of Bazaar back. So you may be able to get it.
I may have to get it for you.
I said to Marvin, I don't want to work with models anymore anyhow. We would like to get real women from the New York Society. And I had a beautiful studio on 3rd Avenue with a penthouse and a great terrace. And I said, we'll make a cocktail there and invite a lot of people, and I'll just walk among the people like a paparazzo and and take, take shots like paparazzi. And we did that, and there came a lot of women of the, of the good New York society, and a lot of people from the embassies.
Oh.
And they all had drinks and talks, and I walked through them, and there were a lot of celebrities, and I took those photographs. And everyone was extremely happy with the photographs until it turned out that one of the people of the party was a black African diplomat from the United Nations. And he had moved a lot among the groups. And Nancy White saw that and said, yes, but we can't publish these photographs because if our Debs are seen with this black man, they'll never get married.
Huh.
And
this is what year?
That was 65 or 66, 56. And so
they'll never get married.
They will never get a husband.
What a serious worry.
Yes. And so the 3/4 of the photographs were disappeared and were killed.
It's kind of shocking to me that, because I know that when Abaddon used Danielle Luna at Bazaar in 1965, there were advertisers who refused to advertise again.
But I know I made my test shot with Danielle Luna a couple of years before.
One of the most interesting, very exotic black models at
and
that period.
I was totally naive. I showed the photographs to Mickey Denno of Glamour. And she just laughed at me. She said, "You're mad."
It's hard to believe that this was middle of the 60s, after the civil rights struggle. It was still very difficult for black models to appear in a magazine, and Abaddon made a point of using Danielle Luna in 1965 and still had trouble.
Yes, but Vince, the amusing thing is that 2 years later or 3 years later, I don't know, it became an established rule that one cover out of every 5 at least had to be with a black girl. So it turned all around very fast.
Yeah. No, it was.
Which again is a marvelous thing about America.
And it's odd to think that fashion has some part of influencing society, but it does reflect what's going on and sometimes move it ahead a little bit.
The only problem was that the black girls that got on the covers 3 years later were not the interesting ones.
Oh.
But they were the ones who looked as if they could be white or a little white.
Well, they were very the easier one.
Yes,
Danielle Luna was a much more difficult figure. I think at that point, talking about the revolution, talking about liberation, maybe we should open this up to the audience and see if people have other questions besides mine. If you would raise your hand, if you're interested to ask something, we definitely would, either of us, but certainly Frank, would be happy to respond. Is there anything? Yes. It's like a production group.
Well, yes, I'm glad you asked the question. I think what fashion photography was at that time is a little like, here I went to the most beautiful thing in Vancouver, which is your archaeological museum, and looks at those totems. Well, the fashion photography of the 60s is so far removed from what's done today as those totems are from what's done today. It was just a form of art, or call it art, of tentative of art, whatever. It doesn't exist anymore. It couldn't